So today I wanted to talk about feeling behind in life. I always felt like others knew or had more than me. Like there was always something missing or there was something that I was always lacking. For me, English was my second language and I had to learn as I went. And although I was 4 when I came here, I always felt like I was catching up with the other kids along with trying to learn a new language. When I became a teen mom and then a single mom, I felt like I just didn't know enough or I wasn't prepared as a mother. And when it went to corporate America, I always felt like I was less intelligent or less educated than the people around me. I realized that that had to do a lot with patterns of being in the victim and lack mentality. So the first thing I did was really ask myself, where was this coming from and why was I feeling this way? So the reason that I was feeling that way were in particular two reasons. Number one, it was my upbringing. And number two, it was the neighborhood and the culture that I grew up around. And because of that, I always felt like I needed validation outside of myself, always felt like I was never enough. And I certainly felt like there was so much unfairness when it came to my way of life or the way that I was living or brought up. And I think a lot of that, the biggest thing was like I was continuously comparing myself either to my peers or the way that other people were brought up. And if you're feeling this way or you can relate, I would really recommend looking at where you're starting from. Where you're starting from is very different where other people's are starting from. Unfortunately, a lot of people are born in first base and some people are born in third. And although that may be difficult, it doesn't have to define you. So for me, like I mentioned, my parents were one of the reasons why I was feeling not enough or a need for validating and also always comparing myself to others. There was emotional and physical abuse when I grew up. And also in the neighborhood, a lot of the time it feeds into your upbringing. There was certainly a lot of violence. We lived in a lot of low income neighborhoods. And I do want to say, just because you grew up in a low income neighborhood doesn't mean that you experienced violence or that you didn't have the best upbringing. That was just my example. And that was just my experience at the time. Also, me being an immigrant, not speaking the language right away, having an accent, and also my immigration status. Now, keeping all that in mind, you can't really compare yourself to someone else. So for me, I worked in corporate America where a lot of people had law and science degrees. They also grew up with different parents and different financial situations. Now, what can you do when this is your story? For me, I actually started looking at the advantages and also the uniqueness that you bring because of your upbringing and the things that you experienced. So, because I was a single mom, a lot of the people or my peers around me didn't have the wisdom or the experience or even the discipline that I had or even the work ethic because I was an immigrant. Because of my upbringing, I always had to think outside the box. I was really good at reading people. I was good in high pressure environments. And even though I was a mom, I was always willing to take risk because I had to financially support my daughter. So, meaning I would look for opportunities to move up the corporate ladder as best as I could. I took advantage that I knew 2 languages. My goals were very important to me, what kind of neighborhood I lived in, and I wanted my daughter to grow up in a safe neighborhood, to have different opportunities that I did. So I always looked for ways to move up in the company so that I was able to provide her and myself with that lifestyle. I also learned to start validating myself. And one of the things was paying attention to my mindset. We tend to have a very negative mindset. And because of that, we tend to look for validation outside of ourselves. And that also has a lot to do with not feeling enough and our worthiness being based on the things we do instead of who we are and what we bring to the table without any of the titles or education or finances that others tend to define themselves by. Another thing that I started doing that you can do too is starting to accept exactly where you are. Now, how do we start accepting where we are when we're finding it really difficult not to compare ourselves to our peers or to those around us, right? And that's understanding that right now, where you are, you're in your purpose. For me, when I was a teen mom, when I was a single mom, my purpose was to try to be the best mom that I could. That meant that I had a lot of introspection that I had to do, that there was a lot of healing that I needed to do. So sometimes in life, where you are is either you need to be the best mom at that time, you need to be the best worker at that time, or you need to start healing. It is possible, as an example, like just for me, my upbringing, I had a lot of healing that I needed to do. So there were periods in my life where I was just healing. I was introspecting, I was writing, I was journaling, I was talking with a therapist. When you're healing, it isn't a time to be focused on moving up and hustling and working and all that, because a lot of your energy is going into healing. And sometimes those things need to take a priority. That's not to say that you can't do those things. You can't be a mom, you can't heal at the same time, or career, because of our energy and the time that we're allowed in the day. It's best to focus on what is my purpose at this moment. How can I best serve myself at this time? I know for me, there was a time where it was important to me to talk about mental health, especially in the Latino community. I know we don't talk a lot about mental health. We don't talk a lot about depression, a lot of the things that we face, because it's very taboo in a lot of cultures still to talk about struggling with these things. And I felt like it was my responsibility and my purpose to start speaking about it, but also talking about my story and sharing that story so that people had that example. The last thing that I'll say is, just like I mentioned, ground yourself knowing that you are in your purpose, or you are supposed to be, that a lot of the lessons, a lot of the experiences that you're going through right now are going to either help you or others in the future, and can possibly inspire your family, your children, or even those that are in your family and in your community. All right, guys, I hope you find this video helpful. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about the steps that I gave, and let me know how you dealt with feeling behind in life. Thanks for watching.